This is Jay Briscoe here, and you're watching the Wrestling Roundtable, the best damn wrestling show on the whole damn internet. If you ain't watching it, you ain't manning up.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com, and you can get lots of DVDs. It doesn't have to be WWE, UFC, TNA. It doesn't even have to be a DVD. Whatever you want to get it through our Amazon store at WrestlingRoundtable.com. And we just talked about independent wrestling. Documentary that, I guess I made on independent wrestling, the Wrestling Road Diaries, soon to be Volume 1. Volume 2 is coming out, but WrestlingRoadDiaries.com if you want to find out more about that documentary. And now we have a whole new panel and a whole new panelist too, but first the returns. Will Effin Brooks, first to my right, which is your left. He's been a fan of 23 years, and he's in our chat room every Monday night during Raw on WrestlingRoundtable.com. I guess I might as well call you my co-host on Wrestling Roundtable Radio too at this point, but also to my right, your left, Rodney LeConte. Been a fan of 23 years, and I guess the only person left over on the show this time from the first season. We've been doing it for 4 years already. Can you believe that?
Time flies.
Our fifth season, yeah. But for the first time on the panel to my left, which is your right, you may have seen him on YouTube with Ants Rants, but he is Anthony Garrity. He's been a fan of 22 years, and welcome to the panel, Anthony.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
All right, and we're going to talk about The Undertaker's career. Now, a lot of us started out as fans, actually fans of the show. You've been watching the show, and Will Brooks watched the show that we started 4 years ago, but we've all been watching a lot longer than that, and one of the guys that we've been watching pretty much almost the entire time is The Undertaker. And he started out in the territories, as we referenced before, in Texas, moved his way on up through Memphis, and actually you can find an old match he had with Steve Austin in Memphis, long before the SummerSlam 98 Highway to Hell match, which was interesting. But, of course, he ended up in WCW as Mean Mark. He was teamed with Danny Spivey as one of the Skyscrapers, but that didn't last too long, and he ended up in the hands of Vince McMahon in the WWF, and the rest is history. That's all for right now? No, of course not. He's been there ever since, and he's had a long, historic Hall of Fame career. I don't know why. What's he ever done? But all jokes aside, Undertaker really is one of the best of all time. I mean, just in terms of big men alone, he's got to be mentioned up there with the upper echelon, not just even because of the name. He's got a reputation. I'd even say a mainstream name along there with like Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin. Undertaker's got to be up there. By now, I think people know about him. But as opposed to, let's say, Andre the Giant or someone that more wrestling fans know like Bruiser Brody, this guy was all over the place. Maybe not in terms of character, but in terms of matches. In the ring, he had so many classics with so many different types of people. And it did seem like he went through many periods, especially at the beginning and later on when he became the Dead Man again, where it was Monster of the Month. Throw Viscera, or King Mabel at the time, Giant Gonzalez, Kamala, and later on Heidenreich and Kozlov and Kali. And he seemed to deal with a lot of the crap a lot of the time. And then he also had a lot of great matches from Mysterio to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and everyone in between. So this guy has a great career. Even if right now it's starting to wind down, which is really why we're taking a look back on it to about once a year at this rate. Even so, people still look forward to it, especially with the streak. So being that he's got such a character, I don't know if anybody else in that role would have succeeded to this level especially. So what made Undertaker so special?
Constantly changing with the times. If nothing else, let's look at the colors. You started out with the dark gray, then the newer generation, you had that light purple, and then in the Attitude Era, he was all black. Then he changed it to the Underbiker, then came back as a Dead Man. He's just constantly changing and redefining his character to make it seem fresh.
This year, everyone was looking forward to the reveal of the haircuts, so that's another cosmetic thing. But what made Undertaker appeal in your eyes?
My father was a real-life Undertaker, and I just remember watching, and when I was a little kid, I was afraid of him, actually. But what I think makes him so good is that for such a tall guy, he was also so agile. He made a lot of shitty wrestlers look good. So
Giant Gonzalez couldn't walk the ropes.
Yeah, I mean, when they put him in with all those monsters, he really did help even though he beat a lot of them, he tried to put them over.
Your father was an Undertaker, and that reminds me why I love this part of wrestling, because Paul Bearer had
it is a real-life Undertaker
right,
as well.
But people look at that and go, that's just a cartoon gimmick. Like, they assume that they just made that up for him, and it's really just a really colorful cartoon version of their actual experience. And he's not the only one, like Big Boss Man, too. So what made Undertaker appeal to you? I know you've been an Undertaker fan a long time.
Undertaker! There's something very intriguing about his character when he was brought in as the mystery partner at Survivor Series.
Which we all all thought was Virgil.
That was Virgil. Right. There was this aura that this guy can't be hurt, and that he was this weapon that was attacking wrestlers, and that like any offense that he could do would not phase him.
Nothing hurt him. He used to pick people up with one hand.
Yeah, and he came with the gloves and the long hair covering his face. It was something very mysterious. And I think that's something that they really kept and built around, is that he didn't have to adjust to his opponents. His opponents had to adjust to him. And he would always play these mind games with his opponents, and they'd have to try to get around that and just try to get over the aura of the Undertaker. And I think that's something I enjoyed with each opponent, whether it was a pay-per-view or a Raw. You see how they react to the Undertaker. You see how people like Diesel, how at first they say they're not scared, but then there's certain points where you see that the Undertaker mind games would get to him, and how Yokozuna was easily affected, and you get to Bret Hart where it really wouldn't affect him as much. So it was really great to see how each opponent would adjust to facing the Undertaker.
And conveniently, every opponent was afraid of caskets. Kind of like Jake the Snake fought guys who were all afraid of snakes. But yeah, that Diesel feud in '96 when he had that casket open up on Raw and that, I assume, mannequin, maybe it was Nash, it looked just like Diesel in the casket. It was pretty freaky. And there were a few moments like that, but we've talked about a lot of the cosmetic changes, and there were some slight alterations to the gimmick. Well, in 2000, it was a big one. But of all the different versions of Undertaker, what was your favorite?
I love the heel Taker during Attitude Era, because that was when he was his most evil.
Satanic.
Yeah, and then also that was when he became a permanent main eventer.
I thought the heel ministry leader, it looked like an Egyptian sort of thing. I thought that was pretty cool, too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm just biased because I'm still a huge fan of the new generation, but I like the purple look. Not new
Can't
music.
see his face.
And the,
Yeah,
the
the
mask he had.
No, not the mask. That's
I meant the
95.
hair.
Yeah, I just like that with the new music. Just the whole build-up, the return of a new, stronger Undertaker. It's one of my favorites, and you don't have to do too much to change. All you have to do is just do a slight tweak and keep that character. The thing with Undertaker is that they kept it simple. They didn't really do any changes. They didn't add catchphrases to them. They kept it very simple, kept to the core, and built upon it.
Well, Booger Red certainly didn't catch on. What was your favorite version?
My favorite is, like Will said, is the Attitude Heel, the Ministry of Darkness. There will be a sacrifice tonight. And he had something like a goatee growing. Mm-hmm. It was completely different from
like a pharaoh, I think.
From what I was used to, and I just was really, really into it at the moment. At the time, it was I think the same time when he tried to do the live embalming of Stone Cold Steve Austin on Raw, and I just thought it was great. But at the same time, like I said earlier, I also loved when he first came and he's unstoppable. No matter what you do, finisher after finisher, he's still going to rise up. All Paul Bear had to do was lift the urn over his head.
Vince McMahon may hate bringing up the American Badass, but that's what I'm going to do. We touched on it a little bit, but that was a very big diversion from what he had been doing, actually before and since, becoming this biker, which was really part of his personality. He didn't necessarily get or want to show because he was really wrapped up in his character, you could tell. But this different take on The Undertaker, I didn't particularly care for it until he became a heel in 2002. Mm-hmm. Actually, it was December 2001, excuse me. But in 2002, when he cut his hair real short and he was on Raw and SmackDown, like when he was feuding with Hulk Hogan, but doing one thing with Jeff Hardy and another with Tommy Dreamer, I really liked that version of Undertaker because we didn't really see anything like that before. Like when Triple H came out on Raw and beat him up when he was supposed to be on SmackDown. That brand split lasted like 2 weeks. But he's beating up Undertaker and the cops had to stop him in the back. You remember that? And Undertaker's like, it's a good thing you got him now before I get up. You're like, that was very different than Undertaker in 1990. So how'd you feel about the American Badass? There were a couple different versions of it. Did you like any of them?
I thought it was a good change. I kind of knew that it wasn't going to last too long. The character, you could just tell by the fan reaction, it wasn't going to have the legs that the Deadman character had. But I thought it was pretty refreshing. The comeback itself was what made it at Judgment Day 2000. Mm-hmm. Coming from the Satanic character in 99. I mean, it feels something from like 96 and it happened. It would have been a big jump because that's when, if you look at his interviews and stuff, it was almost like he was reading scripture. He didn't have like the free play of language that he did in 2000. But in 99, he kind of like opening up a little bit more, and then that kind of was a good transition into the 2000 character.
It was good. It was, again, like you said, it was very refreshing, needed a change. But you also, again, we knew it wouldn't last forever. We knew the comeback for the Deadman was going to be huge. At the time, they were kind of getting away from characters. So it was basically him just saying, okay, fine, I can run with this, but I'll eventually come back. And when he came back in 2004, I was not watching Wrestling Time. I actually was contemplating ordering WrestleMania just because he was coming back as a Deadman. I didn't do it, though, but
there was a lot of anticipation to see the return of the Deadman and his entrance at WrestleMania 20, yeah. Well, we didn't know Paul Bearer would be there, but it ended up being pretty good.
I mean,
Yeah.
I like the American Badass too. I especially liked him when he was a heel. He was a monster, coming out teaching lessons in respect for everybody.
This is my yard.
This is my yard, biggest dog in the yard. The only thing I didn't like about the American Badass, how the Undertaker was always like this monster, this destroyer. He's going to come out, he's going to whoop your ass, he's going to teach you a lesson in respect. But then when he was resorting to hooking the tights and putting his feet on the ropes, I just wasn't too much into that aspect of it.
I mean, I agree with Eric. I think that character really took a change for the better in 2001 when he turned and he cut his hair off, and it wasn't as drastic as this haircut from this past WrestleMania. It was weird all of a sudden, whoa, Undertaker with his haircut. But I think it was a good chance for him to kind of be himself. Because I feel like that's how he is outside of the ring. He's a big guy. He loves his motorcycles and stuff. So that was a chance for him to get away from the more scripted stuff and be more of who he really is.
Well, we're going to cover more of The Undertaker's career, some of our favorite matches and moments when we come back.
Oh man, I remember April 100th on the show. It was so hot.
Yeah, because you're like, you're like.
Surprised you didn't guys bring up his entrance music.
The Kid Rock version, Kid Rock one.
Yeah.
Yeah, roll. I forgot about that. But I liked when they changed his music, like when it was the Tombstones, but it was like dun 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 dun. It was like right around like when they became corporate ministry. He used. They sped it up a little bit.
It's Bret the Hitman Hart. Make sure you watch the Wrestling Roundtable.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Like I said, we've got all the links to our social networking sites, Twitter, 2 Facebook pages, a group page, and a fan page. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe to us. You're probably watching us there, but you could be watching us on Go Fight Live. But we also have our entire archives available on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. That's over 100 shows. So if you think we haven't talked about tag teams and title belts and all that other stuff from Season 1, which you haven't looked up yet, look at WrestlingRoundtable.com and find a listing for all the shows, please. So we were talking about The Undertaker's career, and moving on a bit, I mentioned the streak. This has become a big selling point for WrestleMania every year. It's pretty much more important than any title, it seems. So going into next year, there is a lot of talk of who Undertaker is going to face, and in relation to Brock Lesnar or one of the other people they bring in once a year to try and save the company. So do you think The Undertaker's streak, now that it's 20-0, do you think at this point it should ever end? Is there ever going to be at this point someone who should come along? And yes, 1,000% we feel about that guy, because it feels like they keep their cards very close to their chest on Undertaker's streak. It's very precious to them.
No, keep the streak. It should never end, because it's something that makes him stand out from every other legend of his generation. It's what makes him special. Every year, it's what we look forward to every year. So no, never end it.
And it would take decades to replicate.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Because if they ended the streak, what would be the selling point next? How is he going to come back from losing the streak? I mean, we know he doesn't have a lot of mileage left. It's just a great thank you, I guess, from WWF to The Undertaker. Right now, there isn't a lot of streaks left in wrestling, or a lot of things that are held precious, even as far as title runs. So I think that for one thing to be held precious, it should be that streak.
Hell no. It has to stay intact. I don't think at this point there's anyone else that's really believable who could take the streak from him other than John Cena. Triple H, he could have pedigreed Undertaker through 5 flaming tables covered in thumbtacks, and you knew that The Undertaker was going to kick out. I would keep the streak until the end of his career. Like you said, what else is there for The Undertaker after the streak?
What if there was Kevin Nash and a taser? Would that be okay?
I just think it just
out.
creates more intrigue for his WrestleMania matches, and just gives people a hope, like, is it really going to end? Is it really going to end? You never know, but it creates a very good, interesting point.
I'd never forgive him if the Triple H would have ended it.
I don't think you have to worry about that, but even though you do every year. But that reminds us that Triple H and Undertaker have wrestled 2 times in a row now at WrestleMania. 17 never happened. But
even though that was a great match.
They were all great
Phenomenal
matches.
match.
All 3 of them were pretty good matches. So what are some of your favorite matches of The Undertaker's career? There's lots to think of, and a lot of them at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I did enjoy this past WrestleMania, the Hell in a Cell. I think the whole Michaels being the referee was a great thrown point into the match. Ladder match 02 with Jeff Hardy. Because Jeff Hardy is so much smaller and Undertaker could bully him around, there were a few moments of hope that Jeff Hardy is really going to win the title, and the crowd was into it, the announcers were into it, both wrestlers did an excellent job, and it was one of those matches where I was standing up like, holy shit, is this really going to happen? It was probably one of the best Raw matches, not even Undertaker or Hardy matches, but Raw matches that I've ever seen.
And that match is proof that you need to convince the fans, no matter what baggage they bring to the table, that we know that Jeff Hardy's getting hot, maybe, but it doesn't seem like it. It's going in a different direction, but whatever. The point is, for that bell-to-bell moment, those wrestlers convinced the fans that they might actually do it.
That was the perfect formula for a match.
And that was the time. And even though Hardy lost, Undertaker still, and this is rare for back then at least, as the biker taker, put him over at the end like, wow, you're one tough kid.
Yep.
Any match with HBK, but especially the first Hell in a Cell match.
Yes.
I thought that was phenomenal. Every Hell in a Cell match is still trying to chase that in some way, shape, or form. Especially, there was also a debut of Kane. And when he came in and ripped Cage door off, that was like, oh, shit.
People were all over the first match they had, I believe, at WrestleMania 25. And even though I like the second one better, which I feel like I'm the minority with, both great matches, I prefer the second, I still don't feel that that was the best match they ever had themselves. And that would be the Hell in a Cell, like you were saying. How perfect was that build-up? With the Click building off the SummerSlam 97 finish, too. So this is months later, and Michaels getting this group behind him because he's facing the fucking Undertaker, and they're cheating every week and jumping him every week and chairs every week to the point where, nope, he's finally going to get his in the Hell in a Cell. It was one of those times where the small guy against the big guy wasn't the face, and he had it fucking coming. So the only way he even won in a puddle of his own blood was because of King.
Well, like the pay-per-view before that, they even had like 20 guys around the ring. That's why Undertaker just jumped on all of them. And there was like 4 or 5 referees in that match. It was a complete clusterfuck. That's why they needed the Hell in a Cell. That's how they built up. They needed this big-ass cage to make sure nobody would fuck with them.
If you're a wrestling student and want to know what psychology is, watch that match.
Great way to push Bret Hart out of the company.
Survivor Series 1991 when he won the belt from Hogan the first time. I was a little kid, and there wasn't that many times that I had seen Hogan lose the belt, lose it all. And just to see this young guy, even though it was the worst tombstone of all time probably on Hogan on the chair.
Big sell, though.
Yeah, it was just huge for me as a little kid watching as a wrestling fan that, oh my God, Hulk Hogan actually could lose. I know Warrior beat him before that, but that was like one of the few times I saw Hogan actually lose to someone. Granted, they gave the belt back Tuesday in Texas a couple of days, but...
A lot of people shit on the 1994 Royal Rumble because of all the extracurricular stuff at the end, the supernatural stuff with Marty Jannetty in the suit going up to the ceiling and everything. But you know what? Yokozuna and Undertaker had fucking mad chemistry. Those two put on some awesome matches with some awesome spots. And you know what? Of all times, for this to actually happen, this made sense. No disqualification, so the heels get every other heel in the locker room to gang up on The Undertaker, and it took, 20 people to finally beat him down? And that led into actually one of my favorite moments, which we'll discuss next. But I like to call it, it's not a promo, it's a soliloquy. He just had that soliloquy on the pre-Titantron, on the video screen, about eternal flame of life. Undertaker will not rest in peace. He disappeared. And then he came back, of course, months later with the Undertaker match. But that's not the point. I thought of all the supernatural things they did with him, it was cinematic, it was dramatic, maybe it was cartoonish and over the top, but I enjoyed it. So what were some of your favorite Undertaker moments?
Telling Triple H that HBK was better. I loved it. But first off, is that really a question?
Is that for Undertaker or for Triple H getting his?
Kind of both. But no, seriously, was that ever really a question? Did anybody ever think that Triple H was better anyway? Shawn Michaels' face with all that smug smile, haha, bitch. Yeah, that's right, I am better than you. It was great, and I loved every second of it.
I loved the build-up to the Rumble 94, the casket match I just mentioned, because those vignettes where he's in that little hut building the caskets.
In the cold, yeah.
Yokozuna, I've got a big extra large casket just for you. And you see the casket he built for Kamala a couple of years later. I like details like that. What were some of your favorite moments?
Well, just a few months before that, Survivor Series 93, where for the main event, they were building up to Undertaker getting tagged in. And he didn't get tagged in, and then the Steiner brothers got eliminated. Lex Luger's getting beat on by Yoko and Ludwig Borga. And then finally, Luger gets his moment, and everyone's standing up when Undertaker's about to get tagged in, and him and Yoko have this dramatic face-off. And even though it really didn't last, but it still built up to that Royal Rumble 94 match, and it really made Undertaker look really good. And he saw fear in Yoko, who's been the champion for most of the year for the first time, when you're thinking, wow, Yoko has finally met his match in The Undertaker.
Very creative spot, too, when he went to bonsai drop him and Undertaker sat up and
Yeah.
he totally missed. One of the funniest Undertaker sit-up spots, too, was from Madison Square Garden, a house show in 1991 when he was feuding with Ultimate Warrior. You may remember this was built on the awesome and scary when you're a kid Funeral Parlor skit where he locked Ultimate Warrior in the casket. That was fucking frightening.
Yeah.
Well, it led to this match, and it was a body bag match where Ultimate Warrior actually won, zipped up Undertaker in the body bag, so he won the match, and then Undertaker sat up while in the body bag. It was pretty funny.
My favorite Undertaker moment, hands down, was on the Funeral Parlor, like you said. Ric Flair was out there with Hulk Hogan. What you gonna do, Hulk Hogan, when Ric Flair runs wild on you? Hogan rips the shirt, gets in his face, and then Undertaker comes out of a standing casket. He rips Hogan's chain off, and Hogan's on the floor clinching his chain. And just the way Hogan sold it all, that's just one of my favorite moments from him.
What was great about that, obviously they were building towards the champion versus real champion thing with Hogan and Flair, but then Undertaker inserts himself in there with this very cinematic shot behind the casket opening, and Undertaker comes out, attacks Hogan, and then the babyface commentators, Piper and Savage, were so upset they had to come and help save it. Undertaker no-sold a chair shot, then he ripped Hogan's cross off and dropped it on him, like it was burning him.
And Hogan was like shaking, holding the cross.
Well, there's so many more, and we'll have to expand on it on Roundtable Radio because there's so many more matches and moments to cover, but I'll end it with one word. Pizza. Delivering pizza to Leslie Nielsen in summer '94. But anyway, we're going to move on to some of the best and worst baby faces and heels in pro wrestling next week when we come back for Wrestling Roundtable. So for the panel of Orlando O'Neill, Will Brooks, Anthony Garrity, Rodney LeConte, American Psycho Alex Payne, Shane Hagedorn, and the man who wrestles for Ring of Honor and Chikara yet still has no synergy, Grizzly Redwood. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you and join us next week.
Guess I'll go take care of some more trees. Gotta do something. Not booked. Again.